What is good, guys? It's Rey-Jay back with another video, and this one right now is going on with the overall market, why the market got a very nice bounce, and why it's pumping the way it is, why it actually got this pump and dump like we were expecting in the morning, but then after that it got a very nice bounce, and what you should be watching for now at these current levels. Before breaking things about all this information, let me just mention a couple of things. I'm firstly not a financial planner, so make sure you take none of this as financial advice. And also, if you guys can, please check out the Webull link. The offer ends very soon. If you deposit any amount of money into the account, you're guaranteed up to 12 free stocks. Anyways, let's talk about the market, what's going on with it. So in the morning, we got this very nice pump all the way up to about this 454 level. I was talking about 453.5 to 454. Then I told you guys we'd likely see some downside after that, a nice drop to about the 452 area. And I was watching this like imbalance all the way down here. And after it came down there, I talked about how we could either try to bounce off 452 or we just continue tanking. And I didn't expect the market to just like bounce like very nicely like this. Instead, the market got an even bigger than expected bounce and started pumping quite nicely. That's because we had some positive news that came out for stocks all over the markets, and the market's looking very optimistic approaching the big tech earnings, which are going to be happening starting tomorrow. So what's going on with the market? Why is the market acting this way? Well, the news is coming out right over here that the market is continuing to remain very optimistic ahead of the FOMC meeting, and the market is very excited about earnings coming out. The market is betting that earnings are going to be pretty decent, and it's actually pumping approaching them. Now, one thing that's worth noting is that so far earnings have declined very close to some expectations in a way, and they're not insanely strong this time around, but the majority of them have been quite decent. When it comes to earnings, I'm not as confident about how big tech are going to do. I do believe that Microsoft will do well, but I'm just not as sure about the others. So I'd still be very careful nonetheless. But so far, the market is very optimistic. It's very excited about the start of the week, and the market is still continuing to be bought up. On top of this, we saw some other tickers starting to pump, such as Tesla. Tesla has discussed factory plans for a new $24,000 car with the Indian commerce minister. So once again, this could be happening, and production could be happening even in India if a gigafactory is finally announced. And they're very open-minded to doing something like that. Now, that is once again very bullish news for Tesla. That's why Tesla took off. And then for Apple, we had lots of bullish news that came out. Apple has considered raising the price of its new iPhone Pros. And there's also this news right here that Apple's like taking applications for Vision Pro developer kits. And there's news about how many analysts are raising their price targets on Apple as well. So it's getting good volume. People are very excited, and we're continuing to see very big updates for them. Now, we can see the Dow is now up again, holding up very nicely. The market's very resilient, very excited about the earnings coming out. And that's despite how we ended up opening. So sometimes unexpected news could come out. Sometimes the market could get these very big bounces. And the best thing I'm going to do is just remain as unbiased as possible from this point on. I just want to mention that what's going to affect how the market moves going forward and whether or not the market could continue to pump is going to be the big earnings, and earnings are going to be very important. Now, as far as SPY goes, let's just mention this zone right here. We have this resistance in the very high 454 is about 455 right now. If we break it, the next level is going to be 456. We could see this thing go all the way up to about this 456 area to 456.43. If it breaks that, we're going to be watching 457.88. But basically, get above 455, and we're going to be watching this thing get very close to 456. Now, if it breaks down, right? If we get a big rejection, we have a little bit of support at 454, but then 453.5 is going to be more significant. That's where our 50 EMA happens to be, and historical resistance on SPY. And if that fails us, you're going to be watching 452.69 once again. What do I see right now? Well, it's looking quite bullish. Momentum slowing down just a bit, but overall, it's not really looking weak. The market is continuing to remain resilient, and it's very excited approaching the FOMC meeting because the market's also betting that the Fed is going to get ready to like officially pause very soon. They think this could be the final rate hike. And on top of that, you have to remember that we had bullish news for Aapl and Tesla and all these different stocks, and we're very optimistic. The market is very optimistic approaching earnings. The IWM, or the Russell 2000, is also up a little bit. Once again, getting very close to this resistance right here at this 195 area. If it gets above this, if it breaks above the 195s very nicely, the low 195s, then we're going to see this thing push all the way up to about 196.25 as the next major resistance to be watching for. And above that, we have 196.73. If it breaks down, you're going to be watching 194 as the major support. All right. For Tesla, you're going to be watching, Can Tesla continue to break out? Tesla had some very bullish news that came out. And despite Tesla kind of slowing down in the morning, coming down to these levels down here around this like 255 area, I warned you guys we might see Tesla come down. We did see Tesla in the 250s for the time being, but it got a very nice bounce instead. This was different from what I was expecting because this new news came out. First, Tesla got downgraded. This thing was very weak in the beginning, and then this big news came out, and this thing just decided to rocket after that. And you can see right here, our resistance right now is going to be at this 270 area. If it breaks that going forward, and right now it's testing 268 as our support right now. You can see it's testing it in real time. But if it breaks 270, you're going to be watching 272 and then 275.18, followed by 277.68 as our resistances. Support's at 268. If that fails, we have a little bit of support around this 267.25 area, but that's not as significant as 265. 265 is going to be strong support for Tesla now. And if that fails us, there's 262.5 and 260. But like I said before, we're testing 268 right now, so watch these levels very carefully. For Aapl, Aapl was very interesting. We actually started off on a very weak end. A very strong end, getting this nice push up. Then it got this big rejection, came right back down. And it became very, very sideways and choppy after that. It started off very strong, then it ended up slowing down, very sideways price action. It is hovering between 193.5 and about 192.9 as its support, going back and forth, very sideways. Whichever direction it breaks in, that's going to determine the next level. You can see them right here. For the QQQ, I thought this thing would get a nice pump to about 377, then reject and come all the way down, but this ended up being a fake out. Very interesting to have witnessed the fake out. And what happened was we got this pump, we came all the way down, and they were probably tricking a lot of investors into thinking that this thing was going to dump all the way down to like 373, because that would have been the next level. But instead, they bought it up at 374, right near the gap. They tricked as many investors as possible. And then they pumped it right back up to its previous high. It's getting very close to it. I'm seeing sideways price action. It's kind of stuck between 375 to 377 in this range. It's been stuck like that for many hours, so I do expect that to remain. But if it does break 377, you're going to be watching 377.5, then 379. If it breaks below 375, you're going to be watching 374 as its support. For Nvda, this thing did something what I predicted. I told you that this thing would likely try to base around 440 to 442 and then try to bounce. And we saw this thing bounce all the way up to about 450. In the 450s, which is our actual resistance right here, 450 to 444.77. That's basically where support is, and then 450 is going to be our range of resistance, going back and forth and back and forth. If it breaks 450, you're going to be watching 452.5, then 455 as resistances. And if it breaks below 444.77, you're going to be watching 440 as the next major support. For now, it's holding up nicely, so I'm going to be watching this just range trade for the time being as it has this range, but it could still break 450 as the market is quite resilient. Microsoft's a little green. I told you guys we're likely going to see a bounce on Microsoft. I was expecting this thing to get like a back test of this trend line, so I was thinking it's going to bounce like around 343 and then keep going. It actually went down to 342, then bounced, and it's showing some strength approaching earnings. Things are looking pretty good so far. Last but not least, for Meta, this is actually looking very weak. Unfortunately, what I told you was we might bounce off 290 or we could go down to 287 and then bounce. Right now, it just barely tested 288.3, and it still is looking kind of weak, not getting a true confirmation yet. So we have to see 287. This is a very important level. It needs to bounce off this. If it fails to do so, we're going to be watching 285 in the very low 280s possibly. If it does get a nice bounce, we're going to be watching it to retest this imbalance at 297 and potentially make its way up to 305. So watch these levels carefully, see if Meta could get a bounce off this area. We need to see if Meta could hold up. And until I see you guys in the next one, that's what I have for this video. And I just want to say I'm sorry that I can't always predict every piece of news when it comes out. And sometimes the market could be very tricky to predict. Sometimes there's lots of fake outs. Sometimes, crazy things like this could happen, right? So the best thing to do is always be prepared and watch your different levels. I was basically seeing a pump and then dump in the morning. That is what happened. Then I told you we could get a bounce somewhere in the 452s, but I didn't expect it to bounce this hard. I thought it would just remain very sideways, kind of weak. Instead, it bounced a lot better than expected as the market's very optimistic and very strong. And like I said before, sometimes things like this happen. So the best thing to do is watch the levels because we're always going to be prepared nonetheless. And for that reason, I'm just going to talk a lot more about all these different levels and then talk about what's more probable. But you'll always be prepared for how volatile and how wild the market could be nonetheless. All right. So thank you for listening. I'll see you guys in the next one. Market to the moon and peace